I followed a $1 billion blueprint to start, automate, and scale my rental arbitrage business from 0 units to 60 units inside of 3 years. And I'll show you exactly how you can do the same thing. In 2020, I launched my first rental arbitrage business, guided by the same blueprint of a Wall Street company named Sonder. Now, Sonder is a publicly traded company. They have 10,000 doors around the world. So I just followed their same blueprint, and within 12 months, I had 18 properties. Within 2 years, I had 46 properties, coming into this with 0 experience. Now, Sonder doesn't own their properties. They lease them, create a master corporate lease with the apartment building owner, and then sublease those as legal furnished rentals, short-term and now mid-term. So I launched my first, and 2 years later, like I said, at over 46 units, making over $200,000 a month. I have since acquired 62 rental arbitrage properties in 6 cities around the country, again, following this exact same blueprint. The kicker is that most people don't even know about this business model, or if they've heard about rental arbitrage, they're thinking that you can do this with single-family homes, which you can't do. Now, single-family homes are fine if you buy them and you list them as a short-term rental and that kind of thing, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a scalable model where you can stack one unit after the other, starting with your initial investment only, so you're growing on cash flow. That's the key to this whole thing. By the way, Sonder went public during COVID. Most people don't even talk about that. Doing the exact same model. They do studios, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. That's it. They don't have a single family home that they're leasing. So all these guys out there talking about single family homes, run away. Here's the breakdown. There are 4 basic steps in rental arbitrage. Step 1, locate markets. Step 2, learn how to acquire property. Step 3, learn how to list and optimize your property so you start making money. And step 4 is a real big one, learn how to automate. Now, do you think the CEO of Sonder, wherever he may or she may live, are going to the units to meet housekeepers or communicating with the guests? No, they're not. It's a business, so there's a system. So for the folks out there who think that they need to go to a property manager as a solution to run their thing, they're making a big mistake. Property managers charge what? 15, 20, 25, sometimes more off of gross revenue. And the alternative, they think, is doing the work themselves. You don't need to do this yourself. So you do need to figure out step 4. So let's dive into this. So step 1, I use AirDNA. Go to airdna.co and I look in the market, make sure I'm able to earn over $6,000 for a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment in whatever submarket, whatever city I'm looking in. For instance, right now, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in downtown Nashville goes for around $2,600. A 2-bedroom, 2-bath in that same exact market on, let's say, Airbnb for a moment here, is making over $7,500. That's a 3x market. Now, by the way, if you think you're going to go run out there and go get a property, go do that. You can. But be careful what you wish for, because running it is where the money is. Acquisitions not. So I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So airdna.co and rentometer.com, compare rent to revenue. And if you can find a market where you can triple rent, there you go. Now, my minimum multiple is 2.0. In the vast majority of most markets, rent exceeds 50% of revenue, meaning a long-term rental, think of like a 2-bedroom, 2-bath apartment, might rent for around $3,000, but you're only able to make $5,000 on, say, sites like Airbnb. Now, most people think, fine, $2,000, I'm still going to make money. No, here's the thing. It's not just the spread between rent and revenue. It's not just between what your costs are and what you're going to earn, right? That sounds like most business models. What we want to find out is if rent is at least half of revenue, better yet a third, we're most likely going to discover a market with high vacancy. And here's part 2. Acquisitions of this business. The reason why apartment buildings are doing this across the country now more than ever is because we have a vacancy problem in the apartment model in this country. Now, there's a whole bunch of different macroeconomic and local reasons. When I started in 2020, it was because of what was going on then. Fast forward a couple of years, then it was inflation. And right now we're seeing the huge construction boom in apartment buildings that has been occurring over the last few years hitting the market. Combine that with high interest rates, and you're seeing why landlords are feeling the pain. Not so in single family homes. We actually have a tight market in this country in single family home rentals, right? But not in apartments. And then the other big step is I locate apartment buildings that are currently allowing corporate leases. You're not going to get rent concessions because they are vacant. They will give you what's known as rent concessions. The whole reason why this business model works is that you can provide a service to another party. And in our case, we're providing occupancy to the landlord. They're providing a property that we don't have to go out and buy and invest a bunch of money in, deal with a bank, buy a bunch of furniture, And actually about that, we're actually renting furniture. I have a whole nother video on how you can rent furniture instead of buying it. We work with a company named Furniture Rental. So that's step 2, how to acquire this. Now, the other big one is you're not going to do tours. You're not going to fill out applications just yet, and you're not going to call these landlords. What we do is I have an automated messaging sequence that gets the attention of the landlord, and we discover if they allow corporate leasing. And through that discovery, we then, later we'll get on a call, we'll fill out applications, and maybe still do a tour. Although I don't like to do tours. If it pencils, it pencils. And so that's what we do. So I have a rental arbitrage calculator. If you want to, just comment below and we'll send you over the calculator. In the calculator, we're going to factor all your expenses and all your income, and it's going to estimate how fast you're going to get paid back based on comps. So the calculator is key to this whole thing. So that's step 2, why landlords are doing this and how you're going to approach them. Step 3 of this whole thing is, how do I list my properties and stay booked? Well, here's the really good news. The online booking of properties is a very young business. Let's call it Airbnb for a moment. The day you list your properties, you're going to list it on 20 different platforms. Airbnb is just one. Here's a crazy statistic, and this is going to go into my next point, step 3. 70% of U.S. amateur hosts are only listing their properties on up to 2 platforms, Airbnb and sometimes Vrbo. Think about that for a second. The fastest way to make money in this world, if you're a business, is open up your channels. The fact that half of the amateur market are doing that, while professional hosts are all listing on Booking.com, Expedia, Furnish Finder, Sam.gov. Yeah, you heard me. The federal government, AL Solutions, insurance companies like them to get relocations, nursing sites, corporate sites, and the like. Goes to show you that there's a bifurcation right now. We're seeing amateur hosts getting left behind. There is a great leveling up in this business. Like it or not, right or wrong, the quaintness of the Airbnb market days are kind of over. They're not over quite yet, they're numbered, I should say. And so during COVID, here's another stat. 70% of US hosts were amateurs on Airbnb. Right now it's 50%. And I predict in the next couple of years it will be much, much lower, probably half. And that's because the things that you can do to optimize your properties and automate your properties are so easy and publicly available. There's automation software like Hospitable. You can hire a virtual assistant and train them really quickly within a week and pay $4 to $4.50 an hour is what we do. And then create a protocol behind every situation. And guess what you just created? You just created your own property management company for yourself. And now you're able to scale because you can't scale chaos. And that's what will occur if you're self-managing. And so the way I did this is I just followed the Sonder model. I looked in the same markets they're in. Then I looked and I found that they have a certain characteristic of those markets. Again, work, business, and leisure. I didn't set out knowing that. I discovered it. Then I found out that they were only focusing on multiples. I actually was bidding in apartment buildings where they were in it too, and I won. I won the bid. In my market in San Diego, we're bigger than Sonder. I know Sonder has 10,000 doors. We're not like them, but we actually have more than they do in our market. And all I did was follow their model. Now, just like in all business models, you can borrow the idea or get inspired by others and then put your own twists on it. And so that's what I did. So I focus on Class B apartment buildings because those are the apartment buildings that are feeling the pain right now in the form of vacancy. So, when a gigantic company goes out and does their homework, they're doing it in the markets they're in. So whenever they build a new building, like we're seeing all over Nashville, all over Austin, all over Sarasota, and all of the development that's going on down there, the young professionals and young people are going to move into those properties. What's left behind? The Class B apartment building that's right between that building, maybe even flanked by 2 new buildings, has amenities, nice building, a little old, 10 or 15 years old, hasn't been renovated, maybe Formica, maybe carpet, and they're feeling vacancy. And here's another crazy stat. At 10% vacancy, that's really hair on fire mode. At 15% vacancy, trust me, the landlord's going to fly to town. He's probably going to interview his staff. The leasing staff are basically salespeople, right? That's what they're there to do. Right? There's other things they do, but their primary job is to make sure they're conducting tours and getting applicants to fill out applications and then get tenants, right? That's what their job is. And it might not even be their fault that the building's at 10% vacancy, but trust me, if they stay vacant on the 31st day, landlord's coming to town. Could be the owner, the actual owner. And he's going to interview them. At 15% vacancy, most likely they're going to get replaced. Just the reality of this world. At 20% vacancy, oftentimes commercial loans, the way they're structured, has a vacancy occupancy clause. And 20% is that number usually in commercial paper. When we approach them and they have a vacancy problem, they might never have considered what we do. And so we lead with, do you allow corporate leasing? If they allow corporate leasing, we talk to them about a hybrid model of that. And that's all this is. We're just finding a properties, in this case apartments, that allow corporate leasing, that have a certain level of vacancy, but in an otherwise incredible market, in a market where government travel is coming from military bases, nurses are coming to work for 6 months at the hospital. There's insurance companies that have relocation, and there's, of course, vacation. Right? So if you're, again, back to Nashville, you have year-round travel. People like to go there for the museum and all the fun in Nashville, but there's Vanderbilt University. There's a bunch of military bases there. There's a bunch going on. There's year-round travel. Now think to yourself, the market that you know of, something like that. And that's a hunch. That's your hunch right now. Then verify it with data. Get on AirDNA and Rentometer.com and compare the price. And guess what? Here's the reality of this. You might think of a market like that, and the data doesn't lie. I go back minimum 24 months. I look month over month data in my spreadsheet. And if I don't see that 2x or a tripling of rent, I walk. I say, damn, I think that market would have cash flow. And if it doesn't, what did you just do? You eliminated all the time waste. Market research is about discovering great markets as it is about eliminating markets you don't want to waste your time in. And my process will take you no more than 20 minutes every morning. It used to take me 20 minutes at the end of the day when I would leave my office. Found a bunch of markets, and then I vetted those markets to make sure there's work, business, and leisure travel where you're tripling rent, or worst case scenario, doubling it, and then make sure the city allows short-term rentals, right? Once you know it cash flows, then you know it's legal, then you know there's work, business, and leisure going on in that market. Now you're able to set yourself up and get a deal. And now there is another step, a qualitative step. What I like to do, and I was about to get into this with you guys, which is I like to assess the market. This is qualitative. We're using our opinion on it. So the way I do that is I get on Airbnb and just make sure that I get to assess my competition. And what I'm looking for mistakes. Think of all the markets that are saturated, the business markets. Think of like, if you're going to create an app for kids, like some kind of game, they're not making mistakes. All the top apps and all the top platforms, they're not making mistakes, right? So it's a dog-eat-dog business, and that's the nature of saturation in the business market. Every business sector in the world is saturated at the bottom. If you sell a lousy product, you're going to have a lot of competition. If, on the other hand, you're doing really well, you're really good at what you do, you're going to be at the top and have fewer competitors. And the interesting thing about this business model, the online booking of property, again, let's for the moment call it Airbnb, is less than 10 years old. Sonder just started in 2014. They went public in 2022, acquiring property with door one. They started with one door. They have 10,000 properties now all over the world. They only have 2-bedroom apartments, some ones, a couple studios. That's what they do. You can do this too. This isn't, oh, they're a Wall Street company. They were just a couple dudes trying to do this. Just like I did it, just like I started with one unit and I scaled from there. So here's another giant opportunity. Right now, the bar to get in is so low. If you look at the most sophisticated markets in the United States, go to Nashville, you can look at San Diego, Austin, look at some of these markets, get on page one of Airbnb, and you're going to see a few hosts making mistakes. So back to my analogy about saturation, if a market is saturated, you would expect to host every single 18 units on page one of Airbnb, and that's in that downtown Miami market. Let's use that for an example. Is using professional photos, has someone answering the phones at night while he's sleeping, is using dynamic pricing, right? And so in the litany of other things that most hosts are not doing. So right now, go find a market that cash flows. Make sure it's legal. Make sure there's work, business, and leisure. So step one is list your property on Airbnb. Step two is hire a VA and have that person then list your property on Booking.com, Expedia, Google Travel, Furnish Finder, Ale Solutions, and Sam.gov. Do that. And then go get a software for $40 a month called Hospitable, and then link all those platforms with your one property. And now you have an app from a VA communicating with your guests, answering inquiries when you're sleeping, and managing your cleaners and turnovers. That's all from an app. And then once you do that, you will be more optimized than 90% of the market out there with an inferior product, with an inferior property. A 2-bedroom, 2-bath, mid-scale, upscale, Class B apartment building isn't going to be as good as the condo across the street. But guess what? You'll beat them all day long because they're not doing those things. They're not answering the phones at night, right? Because they don't have a system. They're not listening on beyond Airbnb. It's a different thing for them. And a person who owns a condo, a lot of times, they want access to it. So they're not going to rent it long term. So they may just slap it on Airbnb, and whatever they make on it's fine with them. That's half the market. Now think to yourself other lucrative markets where that's the case. So there's not only a massive opportunity on the demand side, but on the supply side, we've never seen anything like the construction boom that's occurred in the last 4 years, and it's continuing. You can't look at any direction in downtown Nashville. I'm going to keep on picking on that city without seeing a construction crane. And And there's a multitude of other cities. We see all these, companies that left my state in California, all these companies that left New York and New England for good reasons, right? There's greener pastures in Texas, Tennessee, and Florida, and a bunch of other states. And then even companies left. So now we're seeing more demand for properties like ours, and we're seeing a ton of more supply. So the 3x multiple. So that's step 3. Step 3 is you can list your properties really easily right now. And by the way, use dynamic pricing. There's a whole bunch of different pricing softwares. That's going to be $80 a month total. 40 for your channel manager, 40 for your dynamic pricing. And not only your costs lower because you're doing this internally, you have a VA running your front desk instead of a property manager. You're not doing the work yourself, but you're getting bookings while you're asleep. Here's another big one. A lot of people stinges. They're like, oh, I'm not going to hire a VA. It's going to cost me $700, $800 a month. And I only have one property. Well, listen to this. If you get one booking a month that you would otherwise have lost because you were sleeping and the guest who was booking with you needed to book in the middle of the night, that's what they do. One booking a month will pay for that VA. So remove the limited mindset. Have the VA on there. They're going to audit your listing, do all the things you're not going to do, and then answer your guests. They're going to make way more than that for you, by the way. So that's a revenue generating employee. So once you do that, then the biggest thing of all, I actually think this entire business, going back to my Sonder example, why the CEO is not running off their properties, right? Just systemize it. And the way to systemize, there are 3 things. Team members, so in our case, a virtual assistant that's trained. You need to train them. We have a very specific 5-day training program for all of our VAs. We don't share it with anybody. We don't share it out to the public because it's very important. We get our VAs to work autonomously on the day 6, 90% there. And then step 2, create protocols. We have 900 protocols for everything that they can do. So if a guest, messages in the middle of the night and says, hey, do you have a military discount? You allow my dog to come? Whatever they have, we have a canned message response. And we have a technology, an app that I created that allows our virtual assistant to be able to handle that message within 6 minutes. So 6 minutes response time maximum to respond to our housekeepers. 6 minutes to current guests and 6 minutes to inquiries. If it's more than that, from my experience, we split tested. I've had 10,000 reservations. I know at the point in which you're going to lose business, response time is a thing. It's no different in our business, actually especially so in our business. Someone makes an inquiry, they're judging you against other hosts. They're thinking about who they've got you bookmarked with others. You respond to them aptly, quickly, professionally, using their name, and you will get that business. And the same thing for your guests. Sometimes something bad could go wrong in a unit. Hey, it smells like smoke. What are you going to do? The way you handle that, the way you communicate with that can really diffuse a really terrible situation. So the VA has the protocols, the parameters of what you authorize them to do. For instance, in our company, we don't allow them to do refunds or safety issues. That's an escalated matter to my operations manager. Now think of the frequency of that occurring with 1 unit or 5 units or even 20 units. They're seldom occurrences. They happen every few days. If you have a virtual assistant there, hey boss, guest wants a refund, he's checking out early. Okay. Let me talk to him. Or you can have a protocol around that. And we do that. We just don't let the VAs physically refund anybody. And the other one is safety. Something goes on in the unit, safety issues, manager jumps in. But again, it's not like it's going to be 100% automated. I actually have created an automated system for myself because I actually have a couple steps in place. But you can, in the very beginning, up to your 20th unit, you can do all of this with a handful of VAs. And so the automation is all about protocols, people, and their process to do that. And you can do this yourself, meaning in your company, not personally yourself. And you can focus on everything else that's important in life, or your next deal, or your next several deals, and steering your rental arbitrage ship. So I just wanted to go over how this is a business model that's been overlooked by so many people. It's a way to get into real estate for ridiculously inexpensive. Here's an example. I started my first property in February 2020 with $4,800. $4,500 went to furniture, and it looked like an IKEA explosion in my units. I no longer do that. We actually rent the furniture now. I paid $300 security deposit. It was a corporate lease. Most corporate leases, they want between $0 and say $500. And it was the first landlord that actually schooled me in this whole thing. He started talking about rent concessions. I didn't even know what he was talking about. Make it seem like I didn't know what I was talking about. And he kind of caught it. He goes, you know what that is? I said, yeah. I go, is that free rent? He goes, yeah. So in corporate leasing, we incentivize long leases. And he goes, actually, it's happening now in residential leases. If you've driven by an apartment building, you'll see sign a 2-year lease, get 6 weeks free rent. That's called rent concessions. So I got the first 4 weeks free rent. I got a nominal deposit. And so it was my sweat labor. I moved in for a few days. Don't do that. But then we have a whole process. And now if you take that $4,000+ in furniture purchase, you could rent it for $700 a month, and so you could go to market really quickly. And I was able to acquire 1 unit a month for a little bit, and then I picked up speed. In 2020, I started 2 years into the deal. By the end of the year, I had 13 units. Within 12 months, I had 18 units. Within 24 months, I had 46 units, 46 apartment units, and I just followed the Sonder model. Now, they do a lot different. They're in a little slightly different types of buildings. They're really focused on midterm rental travels, like in New York City, where you can't do short-term rentals. They're dominating that. Good for them. Good company. I just wanted to share with you how a ton of different major operators have been doing this business model quietly. They don't own properties. They're just doing master leasing. If you want to call it rental arbitrage, that's what we do. Now, our twist on this is quite different. So we're in B or B minus class properties. And now the future for us is midterm rental travel. So we cracked the code on getting government contracts on SAM.gov, on insurance company stays. If you have a flood or fire, you stay with us, as well as traveling nurses. Those are the three big buckets within midterm rental travel. But don't just focus on those. Do those adjacent, your short-term stays. And your short-term stays where you're going to make a lot of profit. You can do business and, of course, vacation. Anybody talks to you about rental arbitrage, if they start talking about single-family homes, my opinion, look the other way. There's not a single operator in the United States of America focusing exclusively on single-family homes in rental arbitrage and scaling. Most of the people who do both have a showpiece, but they're really scaling in apartments. I don't know why they're doing that. I think my inclination why is they think it's easier to explain this model through the lens of Airbnb. And everyone knows Airbnb is big houses in the vacation areas. But again, using the Sonder model, you guys can go out right now using my rental arbitrage calculator, which I'll share with you. Just comment below and I'll share that with you. You can go out there and run the numbers on your rent and revenue. Go to markets where I have a vacancy. List your property. Know full well you'll dominate the market if you just do those 5 things. List your properties on multiple platforms. Use professional photos. Hire a VA so they're answering phones at night, and use dynamic pricing. Dynamic pricing software is everywhere. The Price Lab is $40 a month. And once you do that, then automate. Don't give this out to a property manager. Property managers will take all your profit. And the way to do that is threefold. You hire a VA, create protocols for yourself. Now, my protocols took 1.5 years, like every scenario in there. And then create a technology that allows your VAs to access that information, right? It's good. You could have 900 protocols, but if they have to thumb through a manual while you have a crisis going on in the properties, it's useless. So I hope that helps. We're hosting a free live workshop this week. So click the link below and join the workshop. This is going to be the most comprehensive 4-step process. I'm going to go over everything that I just said here, but in much more detail. So click the link below. We'll see you there.